Good morning, it's Measurement Monday. I've got a load of speakers to measure today and I've made a start and thought I'd stop and go through these. These are a pair of speakers that were sent to me by a lovely chap called James. Hello James, if you're watching. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get round to these, he sent them here because he just didn't like the sound of them. They weren't sounding right. The first thing I always do when a pair of speakers arrives is do initial measurements, but with these I thought I'd have a listen to them first, so I quickly set them up yesterday and had probably 15-20 minutes listening to them, and I couldn't listen to them any longer. They were just unbalanced, shouty, not great bass, just wrong. So these are a two-way design, and they're made by a company called Calum Audio. I've never heard of them, although I have heard of a Calum Audio in the PA speaker world, so I don't know if it's the same company. I don't believe these are still in production. I really don't know. I don't know anything about Calum Audio really. A lot of the speakers I have here, I don't really delve into the history of them. It's not something I'm particularly interested in. I get pulled up from time to time in my videos from people who say, oh, you should do your research into the manufacturer and blah blah blah. Maybe, but I'm not here to tell the story of a speaker. I'm here to just sort of measure it and fix it and refurbish it, whatever. It's another speaker. So anyway, these, I don't know, they don't look like they've come from a larger manufacturer. They look a bit almost DIY, but I don't know. They're completely made of, I would say, hardwood ply, and they're nicely made. It's quite a nice finish really. The drivers are really nicely recessed, so all the router work for the woofer is really good, and the tweeter. We have this routed in kind of logo, CNC'd probably, set of binding posts here and a port at the back. They're not particularly big. Height wise, 31 centimeters, 24 centimeters wide, 21.5 centimeters deep. We'll have a look inside shortly. I recognise this tweeter and I think this woofer as well, so we'll see what they are. But yeah, two-way design, ported at the back, some nice binding posts, and yeah, like I say, I couldn't listen to them for long. So let's go through the measurements. So first of all, I always measure both speakers, and here is the on-axis comparison of the two. And when you look at this, you might understand why I struggle to listen to them. So that's the comparison between the two on axis. They're very sensitive in the 1 kilohertz region, which is normally where you'd take your kind of sensitivity measurement, but elsewhere all over the shop. Here is their on axis and phase. And they maintain quite a good phase relationship. So time alignment wise, they're probably pretty good. As we move vertically, things don't really improve. So here's the vertical measurements. And lastly, let's look at the horizontal. And with the horizontal, you see the tweeter drop off as you would expect. In fact, to a degree, from 4,000 hertz to 20 kilohertz as you go off axis horizontally, that does flatten down a bit, but we don't get rid of that massive hump we have between 800 and 3 kilohertz, which the 800 to 3 kilohertz, 4 kilohertz region is the area I often say I prefer to have ever so slightly recessed, like that sort of BBC dip. And these are the absolute opposite to that. That area is peaked up. And when I was listening to vocals on these, there was nothing nice about them at all. If I just flash up the on axis once more, yeah, so you would have seen from 700 hertz up to 3 to 4,000 hertz, 3 to 4 kilohertz. We are significantly peaked up, and that just makes them, you can't listen to them. And there is a buttload of stored energy in that area. Here's the spectral decay. And that just rings and rings and rings. I don't know what's inside the box yet. Sounds very hollow. And last of all, the impedance sweep. The minimum is around 4.8 ohms. The maximum is about 23 ohms. And that shows me the port tuning's around 55 hertz. So here's the impedance sweep. Yeah, so like I say, boxes are nicely made, drivers are nicely installed, port at the back, all good. Port tuning is probably about right. But in terms of what's inside, what's been done on the crossover, it's really wrong. So I think we will be designing a new crossover for these. And yeah, straightening them out a bit, because that frequency response on and off axis is pretty terrible, really. All right, let's have a quick look inside. In fact, I'll bring you in closer so you can just have a close-up look around them. Get my measurements out the way and my bovril. Right, so there we go. Polypropylene woofer, pretty sure it is. Might be treated paper, we don't know yet. But yeah, they're all nicely rolled out round the edges. So yeah, the cabinet work is really nice. I wouldn't have a pair of speakers that are made like this, but that's just personal preference. But the router work, I imagine this has all been done on a CNC machine. It's just really good. So let's take a look inside. These are as loose as. Let's take the woofer out first, because that's probably where the crossover is going to be. Looking at the measurements again and thinking about them, they look like they've been software. The crossover's been software created, so not done through measurements, which doesn't account for baffle step or anything like that. It's purely based on the electrical parameters of the drivers, which is not how you create a crossover. How are we going to get you guys out? Right. So this is Alto. I know of them for electrical components. 5W430, made in Italy. It's quite like a Ciaz driver. Okay. Push crimps. Bit of polyfill. Another bit of polyfill. Okay, that answers some questions. Right, let's take our tweeter out as well. SB Acoustics. Nice tweeter. Okay. So let me bring you in to have a look at the crossover before I disconnect this. So the crossover is in the back there. I'm going to take that out, but that looks to me like a generic off-the-shelf crossover. Doesn't look like it's been purposely made for this. I could be very wrong, but if it was tailor-made for this speaker, you would expect the measurements to be significantly better. Right, let's take the tweeter out. So the tweeter is connected out of phase according to the crossover. Yeah, nice little tweeter. I'm sure that's not an SB Acoustics mid-woofer. If anyone knows, let us know. Right, I'm going to try and get that crossover out, but that's not going to be particularly easy. So, bear with me. Just quickly, this is what we had inside in terms of sound absorption. So nothing actually on the panels, which are 12mm plywood. Some solder blobs rolling around in there. Yeah, okay. Right, so I've taken the crossover out and I think it looks like something off the shelf. Certainly the board is. These are made by, I think it's Corsair. I mean, I use quite a lot of their boards. Conveyor, sorry. Second order high and low pass, third order high pass boards. They're just really good for making up crossovers on. So yeah, obviously the board is generic, but that doesn't matter. Whether the components have been selected to get that response, I don't know, or whether this is a pre-built with a set crossover point, apparently 1.5 kilohertz. I don't know. I mean, we've got some good polypropylene capacitors, air core inductors, sandcast resistors. It looks a bit PA to me, especially seeing these larger power rated resistors. 25 watts, 1.2 ohms, 20 watts, 1.5 ohms. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this is the crossover design. Second order low pass on the woofer circuit, so 1.2 millihenry inductor, and then two 4.7 microfarad capacitors down to ground. And then on the tweeter circuit, we actually come in through one resistor, which is a 1.2 ohm, then into another resistor, which is a 1.5 ohm, so what we make in there, 2.7. Then we come into two parallel capacitors, a 2.2 microfarad and a 1.57 microfarad to the negative of our tweeter, and we ground that on a 0.6 millihenry inductor, so second order high pass on the tweeter. So really simple, but that crossover doesn't work. Its frequency response is terrible, it sounds terrible. There's a lot of stored energy, which may be just because those frequencies between 800 hertz and about 3 kilohertz are just being played so loud. Pulling those down will pull down the ringing we're seeing in the spectral decay. So yeah, long and the short of it is a new crossover needs to be designed and built. So I guess that's going to be part 2. Catch you soon.